Hello, I'm here to do the Stump the Professor questions for the team Wonder Women, celebrating our Wonder Women team with your fantastic questions here. I like how concise they are. I'm glad you asked one about myself and leadership. Everything looks good. My answers won't be as concise, but and actually, I don't think of them as answers at all. I think of them as responses. In our online learning environments, we have to think about how we're creating dialogue spaces instead of monologue spaces. And that's coming from you and coming from me. So, this is a chance for me not to just sit here and monologue about a topic, but actually get you to have something to respond to. Creates that more dynamic experience for me, and I hope it's working for you as well. So, definitely not the answer, just a response. After that qualifier, let's get into it. The first Stump the Professor question is: what are the choices slash options for challenging traditional authority dynamics in a healthy way? So, what are our choices? What are our options when for challenging traditional authority dynamics in a healthy way? So, I do want to point to a question from the Creative Cool communicators on that has a similar kind of bent in it because they ask, how do employees speak up against toxic classical management practices? This question has a different tilt to it, but there's some similarities in it because it's me and I'm coming at it from me. So when you have a traditional authority dynamics and you want to come at it in a healthy way, you really have to, that means that you are going to see if there's opportunities for dialogue. In traditional authority dynamics does not mean the same as what the creative cool communicators were saying, where there was toxic classical management, top down only communication. You can have traditional authority dynamics. I mean, in an academic space, we have professors and I mean, the ranking of all the different types of professors, but then you have a chair of a department, you have a chair of a school, you have deans, you have, I mean, provosts and presidents, and there's all these like structures in our classic academic environment. It's an organization. And those authority dynamics does not necessarily mean it's dysfunctional. It definitely the size of most academic structures or organizations that get really big often are always dealing with a slight element of dysfunctionality, meaning that for the cogs in the machine, to use the mechanical metaphor here, it all the moving parts don't always know about all the other moving parts. And that's why you have things like HR, or if you have an inclusion and equity diversity office, or if you have a union representative, if you have things like this, those things are built in order for ways to build an advocacy or find ways to speak up if you see something, if you're experiencing a hostile work environment or if you're a witness to a hostile situation. These are things we want to be aware of. What does your organization have? Uh, if you want to challenge the authority structure, what is your organization already kind of have in place? Are you even aware of it? Sometimes you don't even know about things like an ombuds office might exist. Ombuds being, it's a place that isn't, uh, ombuds office traditionally are not going to report your situation or your conflict. That's not what they're there. They're there to help you navigate the complexity of your conflict, and ombuds office often knows place if you want to go to a more escalated place, who would you report to. It also teaches you how to advocate for yourself, things like that. So you want to look for anything that might exist like that in your organization. Not all organizations have unions and union representatives. Sometimes you might be dealing with a union representative you don't necessarily get along with, or you feel like there might be some risk in even doing that. These things do exist, and so we want to recognize that part of it. Um, So those are some options to think about. What is in the structure of the organization? If you were to go about talking to someone, it would be good to, if you don't have power, right? I'm going to go at this like you do not have any power. Uh, you want to, there's some things you're going to have privy to, and there's things that are not transparent. There's things that you may not have access to information. Even if you want access to it, you may not have access to it, but you could ask. Uh, and so you could say, hey, I know this is due by this deadline. Is there any way we can talk about the work that is being asked within this space? I'm just thinking of something off the top of my head. Are we really pressed strictly to that deadline? Here's the moving parts I'm having challenges with. If you feel like you even can say that, you may not be able to. Sometimes when we are looking at situations, they create competitive workplace environments where you even saying you might have a problem or you might need more time leaves a gap in someone else to sneak in. Like they often, some places get really dysfunctional and have people competing with each other horizontally. uh, or if you've made a mistake, there's no room for mistakes. And this is when you're going to see leaning into things like AI and leaning into the the perfection of a product and not workplaces as human processes for problem solvings and moving towards productivity as a journey of authenticity. And you can think about like, well, I don't know. I think this question, this where I'm going is actually stepping on the toes of another question. So just to stay in this lane, if you do not feel like you have room to challenge authority or upward or talk to someone in a power position to you, or you have competitive places where you cannot self disclose this way as well, you're going to learn that through trial and error. And as you get your information and you learn, you have to find ways to finding out where your boundary is for yourself, for your own well being. And that means you are at work and then you're not at work. How are you creating time to step away? How do you refuel yourself? Which is the module for this week in our Canvas site. What is burnout and vacations, and thinking about agitated states? How do you get to the slow spaces? How is slow space allowed for yourself so you can really take care of your own well-being? And there's a lot of things I have to say about that, but I think if you're out of options at work to communicate into power, the next step is to take care of yourself and knowing how to turn off work. If you're trying to turn off work, for example, and you get home and you're like, good, I turned off my phone, I turned off my email, it's just me and my family, but all of a sudden this sticky thing starts coming up about work, right? Oh, that really bothered me. Oh, this person, and I have to deal with this person. Who are the safe people you can talk to without that isn't creating enmeshment or emotional codependency with the people you love to support you to go back to that toxic environment? Um, is there a place where you could write it down? Like, okay, yeah, oh my gosh, this came up about work. It's really bothering me. just make a note of it, acknowledge it, and then slide it and put it away. And if it comes up again, go back to that, write a note. And then when you're ready to deal with work again, or you want to put aside some time to think about something, you get that your notes out and you go, okay, that's right. I wanted to think about how I wanted to handle this. I want to think about how I want to handle this. If we just, it's one thing like, hey, how was your day? And I want to tell you about the drama of word. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened with so and this, and have a little decompression moment. But if you're dependent on the people you love to emotionally help you unload as in a meshment kind of way, I'm not really articulating it correctly, but you could be fracturing the relationships you need in your private life, um, that are making it so you can that might actually do more damage than good, and create more problems. Remember your friendships, your romantic relationships. These things are the most valuable thing, and you need to take care of those and find ways that you have room to emotionally show up for others and they have room to emotionally show up with you without draining each other from the workplace leakage into your private life. I hope I made that clear, and I hope there is some information in there that was useful. All right, I'm going to move on to question number 2. What steps can a team take to actively overcome groupthink and encourage diverse perspectives? Oh, I love this question. This one I feel a lot really comfortable with. Uh, this is a recommendation from Susan Cain, who really her way of talking, her area of expertise is the area of introverts versus extroverts, which I think can help us understand groupthink a little bit better. Because what's happening in the dynamics of groupthink is you have someone who has much easier way of problem solving and speaking in shared public spaces. They're willing to jump right into the messiness. They're talking out loud. They go, oh, what about this? What about this? And this kind of more extroversion of and performance of problem solving kind of creates an energy vacuum where we kind of magnetize into it, and sometimes those solutions are great. We're really grateful for people who know how to use shared public spaces that way. But if it's the only voice, then that's speaking up, that's exploring ideas, then those are the solutions. And they aren't really diverse solutions. They're the people who know how to use public spaces to share ideas is where we always end up. That's the extrovert point of view. And group think is often the low risk way of, we'll just go with what you said. I'm just going to go with what you said. So, what you want to need to do then is to encourage diverse perspectives, is to allow for the people who don't always have great ideas, their perspective is valuable, that they, especially our introverts, they're living in the perimeter of spaces. And so they're going to see things differently. I just want you to think about the difference if you're in the middle of a space looking around and looking at everything, or are you on the perimeter and you're looking at a space? That means that you see things a little bit differently on the perimeter. So we want to allow for that perspective. That's a diverse perspective. And I'm just talking about thinking it in a spatial reasoning way of being in the middle, or are you on the edge? I think Simon Sinek talks about this a little bit when in his book, Leaders Eat Last. Eaters, I'm sorry. I had the word eat and leaders. Just laugh at myself. Okay. Uh, eater leaders, I did it again. Leaders eat last, or real leaders eat, I don't remember how he says it, but he's really talking about being the last one to speak. Means that you're allowing room for other points of view. So how do you do that on a team? Is you're going to pose the questions and have people come in with per, with perspectives so that they came up with on their own outside of the team dynamic. You're going to allow for autonomy, right? Allow for autonomous thinking, allow for time for people to think through an idea on their own. If it comes up in a meeting, an idea, put a pin in it. Say, okay, we've got these ideas on the table. I want everyone to go leave the meeting. Here's three viable solutions. Please come up with three advantages and disadvantages for each of them and email that to me as the supervisor if you want to try and make sure voices are heard anonymous and with more autonomy to avoid politicking, or email it to the team, like, hey, everyone include three uh, ideas before we get to the team, and we're going to open those and go over them as a team. Anytime you allow for autonomy and connection, you're allowing people to come up with their own voice and value different voices. And I definitely, that's one way to think about it, that collaboration does not always mean working together. Collaboration means knowing when to work together and allowing people to work on their own. When you create balance with this and value in alone time, which your extroverts don't, some extroverts, not all, but some extroverts are always going to want the collab time. And if you have a supervisor who's more of an extrovert, they're calling meetings and then they stand at the front of the room or at the table and they use the public space to think through ideas, which is a really expensive way to manage a team because it's not it's not efficient. I hate to use the word efficiency right now, it's being so politicized, but there is, if you think about a meeting, everyone in the meeting, you call a meeting, is making it, let's say, if you break down that hour, because most meetings land within an hour time, whether they need to be 15 minutes or not, that's 1 hour of pay. And you have five people on the team and maybe a manager there who's making even more. Everyone is contributing 1 hour of their salary to that meeting. So just in simple, I'm like if everyone has um $10 just because of it's an easy component that they're contributing to their time to that meeting, $10 a person. You have five people and the manager, and you have a meeting for 1 hour. That's six, and we'll give the manager a little bit more, right? That's $50 uh, for that meeting time. You have to think about every time you call a meeting or a space where we're going to occupy together. And if the manager wants everyone to show up to listen to them, think of through ideas and brainstorm their ideas and listen to them, that's a really expensive meeting. So you want to be really efficient with the way you use shared spaces, that people are coming to that space already having thought through their own ideas and come up with things. And now you can move to the next step of running through how those ideas, which ones are viable, which ones aren't, which ones we want to explore further. So I don't know. That's one way to think about space in a monetized, efficient way. Right? Okay, excuse me a second. I had to cough for a second. I muted it so I wouldn't cough in everybody's ear. All right. I hope that helped a little bit. Question number three. How does Cynefin theory or Cynefin check cognitive biases, especially under stress or crisis? Okay, this is a great question, and it gets to one of my things I love to discuss, and that is the difference between a bias and a cognitive bias and a perspective, which you used the word diverse perspectives in the question before, and now we're at biases. And I love that these are in two different things. Some people interchangeably use, oh, that's your bias, that's your perspective. They're saying that's your perspective, and they should be using the word bias, and some people are using the word bias when they should be using the word perspective. These are two very different ideas, and you should not be tangling them up in your own language. So if we talk, so if I say, how does if your question is about Cynefin and cognitive biases, I want to be clear. When I think of the word bias, I'm thinking that someone's uh, cognitive bias is the wall that they hit that they can't see over, right? They hit the wall and they are, to use my mime, they are stuck behind their wall and they can't see through it. They're stuck here. You know, we want to get people to be able to look over their biases if they can. And if they can get beyond their bias, if they can break through that, not easy to do, they are creating a different perspective. They're increasing their perspective lens, they're widening, or they're taking a different slice. Um, so cognitive biases is thin slicing and it's hitting the wall. You're hitting the wall. Cognitive biases are things like confirmation bias, self-serving bias, uh, fundamental attribution theory. Fundamental attribution is a type of bias. I'm trying to think of a couple more off the top of my head. There's quite a few. There's a lot of them. I can send a link to the a list of cognitive biases. And these are people when you hit the wall. Now, that's that part of the question. The next one is under stress or crisis. And when we're under stress and crisis, we hit an we can hit we can have an amygdala hijack. So an amygdala is the part of the brain that is our kind of our reptilian part of our brain. It's the part of the brain where we move into fight flight. It's a survival piece, and if we get to an amygdala hijack, uh, we are in fight, flight, or freeze, or whatever survival response, whether it's fawning or there's a whole list of them that you can, but really it's the fight, flight, or freeze response. And that means we're going to move into this place of familiarity and what has helped us in the past to survive. If it's helped us in the past to get into the fight, to get in the middle, to challenge and say, get defensive and attack mode, if that's what's familiar to us, people might move there. If it's familiar to run, I'm a runner. I've mentioned it before. Though it's funny, I said that to my friend recently and she goes, oh, sorry, you are not a runner. You lean in. And I'm like, really? Okay, I have to double check that feedback. But definitely in the past, I was a runner. I conflict is very difficult for me, which is why it's my area of study, because as soon as I learned about ways to manage it, I wanted to become an expert in that. So this familiarity feeling is really one of the ways that we get hijacked when we're under stress, especially uh, a crisis type of stress, which is that a moment in time, a capital T kind of moment in time that is making us survive it. But there's also stress, like complex stress, like just the day in and day out grind. And are we working with people that really uh, we feel don't, we're in really uncomfortable situations with people that we don't feel safe with, can create long term erosion of stress. And then we often lose the ability for creativity or productivity or managing time takes a hit under really long, long periods of complex stress, or the complexity of stress. So Cynefin theory is a great tool if you to if you use the tool to slow down. That is really what you need to do. You need to slow down and move into diverse perspective checking, complexity. You want to ask questions of experts and get different points of view pulled in from people who have more experience on a situation. There's all these different things that Cynefin asks you to do, which is actually the sense making tool, using your senses to step back what's happening and before you move into the diagnosis or the action steps. So really what Cynefin is asking is to slow down, take a beat. And as soon as you have to take a beat, that's going to move you out of your biases. Well, no, I'm going to take that back. That's not true. What it does is because complex and complicated thinking uh, are asking you to move into failure, it's moving you into test hypotheses, it's asking you to uh, work with others and not just rely on your own sense making. That as soon as you move into those situations, uh, it's harder to stay in your bias. And it's why sometimes I think that lead some people who feel really uncomfortable with uncertainty or ambiguity are going to want to stay in the obvious or clear, um, and ignore feedback loops, ignore development, and ignore innovation or different um, choices because they want to stay in their own bias. They want to stay up against their own wall because there is a comfort to it with stress. Okay, I think I answered that question, or I gave a response to that question. The next one is about me. Yay. So, question number 4 that was added was, what domain within the Cynefin framework do you feel most comfortable operating inside as a leader? So I live as much as I can in complexity. If I, as a teacher, my I lean into complex as a professor. I lean into complex because I love shared spaces with my colleagues. If you've ever had a meeting with me, some of you, we in this class, all of you had to have a meeting with me. That's one of the ways that I am living in complexity because I am curious about my students. I'm not trying to live in a vacuum that this is the way to teach this class. This is the best way. And you always have to be the one to adapt to me. Even the idea of these questions is an idea of trying to explore what you find interesting. Like the questions really tell me more about what the students coming into the class, what are the things you're dealing with, what are the things that you're up against that this class might have a chance to answer, and then you can use in application. I think I'm often mention that I direct community theater plays, and I teach I've had the privilege of or opportunity of being able to teach young people how to direct plays as they're coming up. And I often tell them, like, you're going to be challenged because of your youth, and your lack of experience compared to someone who's been teaching for 20 or directing a plays over a 30 or 40-year span versus your 8 or 10-year span coming into it of being a part of theater. That is that is only there's a myth to that. If you are living in complexity, it means that you're creating collaborative workspaces for designers and actors to do their process and the administration of the theater. You have to live within the structure of the administration. That is a natural complexity from volunteers to paid staff. If you're in resistance to that, if I'm in resistance to that, as a director coming into that collaborative space, I am I'm saying this is the best way to direct a play, and this structure is against my best way, or you're designing in a way that I can't stand, or this actor has a process I've never used. If you're constantly pushing against that, you're up against your biases. You're trying to force things into the obvious, clear domain when it's not. So that's why I feel like the complex domain is the best place to live. But I'm okay. Well, I'm very sensitive when I make a mistake. I'm very afraid of failure and making mistakes. I have a high feeling of sensitivity that I have to go through with that. I don't just make a mistake and, oh yeah, I made a mistake. No, I take it home with me. I can get sticky with the stress of it, or the fear of failure is prevalent. These things are things I have to work through and live through. And I use a lot of tools that I talked about just earlier in this video, but I use a lot of tools to help me kind of move through my own pain cycle with it so I can get to the other side and know everything's okay. And that's my journey that I've been on so I can live in what complexity offers, which is innovation and human and authenticity and failure and mistakes. I want to live that, and I want to allow for that from the people I work with as well as from myself. So that means uncertainty. That means high risk. It means things aren't, oh, I can't know everything, right? Living in the unknown space means that there isn't always transparency. And I have to be okay with that, because as much as I want to be a transparent, and if you wanted to know about why I'm very intentional in the way I designed this class, if you wanted transparency from your professor on why I do things, you could make a call with me. I'd love to share why I'm doing things with you. Uh, However, as the teacher, or as the director, as a person in power, if I'm demanding transparency, it creates the it creates us just below the level of awareness. It creates a current. I'm getting to the metaphor. It's coming. I'm creating an undertow of mistrust. So we have to think about how transparency can create an undertow of mistrust that can often sabotage creativity. It does, you might need it for your team, but anywhere where you can allow for the unknown or ambiguous situations, um, if it can happen, we should allow for it. It's a complicated question, and it's bringing up a lot about AI and how AI is being used behind the scenes. And one of the dangers of AI and wanting transparency is that it will create this undercurrent, of mistrust, and that is really the ingredient of losing the ability to have creativity. So I'd be curious on your thoughts about this, but I feel most comfortable with it, because I really value creativity, innovation, and autonomy in collaborative spaces. Okay, that's my Stump the Professor for the Wonder Women. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye bye.